We're back here at NRA headquarters, but as you can see, we're not in the Firearms Museum where we usually, well, sometimes we find Phil Schreier, Senior Curator in the Firearms Museum, but last time we found you, you found us down in the vault. This time, Phil has snuck us into the inner sanctum for Phil Schreier, his office, which is really kind of a mini museum on its own. It's full of so much neat stuff, and we're joined here by General George S. Patton to talk about this firearm. Phil, take it away.
Well, you know, thanks again, John, for having us on the show. It's always a pleasure. We've been talking about the guns of General George S. Patton, and there's a great collection of them on exhibit at the George S. Patton Museum of Cavalry and Armor at Fort Knox, Kentucky. And I wish we had an original Patton gun in our museum, but we have a number of the guns that are very similar to the ones he used and carried, and they have great stories behind them. Mm-hmm. So it's not so much about the gun, but the story behind it that makes them interesting.
A man full of great intellect, humor, bravado, and stories.
And one of my favorite is one of the least known stories about Patton.
Please share.
Well, I'd be happy to. Thank you for inviting me to do so, John. We all know George S. Patton is possibly the single most illustrious combat general of the 20th century. As history looks at him, he may be the greatest American general we've ever fielded, next to Robert E. Lee, of course. But Patton certainly holds a firm grip on our psyche from the visuals that we have of the Second World War. Now, in 1909, he graduated from the United States Military Academy in West Point, was commissioned as second lieutenant. He was gazetted to the cavalry, as it was back in those days, but he was very much a swordsman. Patton had a great interest in swordsmanship, fencing. He was more of a sword guy at this point in his life than he was a revolver pistol guy, for which he obviously would become well known, almost iconic as a result of his carrying his ivory-handled revolvers throughout the Second World War. In 1912, Baron Pierre de Coubertin, the founder of the modern Olympics, also founded in 1912 the very first running of the rejuvenated pentathlon, basically one of the original Greek games.
Right.
De Coubertin brought it back for the 1912 games, which were held in Stockholm, Sweden. Now, the pentathlon is running, swimming, horsemanship, fencing, and shooting. George S. Patton competed in those 1912 games in Stockholm. And the interesting thing is that Patton came in fifth.
Wow.
That's pretty neat.
That's pretty good.
How many American military generals do we know that place fifth in the Olympics? But the story doesn't end there. The story gets much more interesting because Patton was cheated basically out of a gold medal. Oh. And let me tell you why. The 1912 games, during the shooting part of the pentathlon, most of the other competitors shot the targets with a .22 caliber pistol. Patton used a 1901 Colt double-action Army revolver in .38 caliber, similar to this gun. The original is on exhibit out in Kentucky. Patton shot his string of shots. The judges saw the large gaping holes in the bullseye that his gun had caused, and gave him a DQ on one round that they said had missed the target.
Yeah.
It's impossible to think that somebody that has put, all their rounds right in the, connecting, would have let a flyer go like that. Patton had actually unofficially set the world record in pistol shooting the day before during practice. So to think he had a flyer, not going to happen. What happened was that one round went through where others had been before, and they just could not see that many rounds had gone through the paper.
Oh, man.
So out of a score of 200 points, Patton got 150. He placed 20th out of the field of shooters in the shooting, and that was possibly, next to fencing, one of his strongest points. The one effect that ruling had was the Olympic Shooting Committee now has different backers for the targets, different ways of making sure that if one shot does go clean through a previous hole, that's not counted as a miss anymore. So Patton, being the consummate sportsman, as well as gentleman, never ever wrote or complained about the fact that the judges cheated him. And cheating might be a harsh word. It was the considered opinion of the judges. Obviously, those that weren't very familiar with pistol competition and large caliber guns. Fast forward. August of 1944, Patton gets his 4th star, full general of the United States Army. World War II ends in Europe on May 8, 1945. Patton's appointed the military governor of Bavaria. Goes through a cross-country tour back in the States in June with Eisenhower, victory lap basically, and then back to Germany in the summer. Eisenhower then appoints him the commander of the historical division, compiling the official history of the war. And so in November of 1945, the weekend after Thanksgiving was celebrated back in the States, Patton made a return visit to Stockholm, Sweden. And there he met the guy that had shot against him in the 1912 games. 33 years later, he had a reception with the King of Sweden, and they reenacted their 1912 pistol shoot-off. Now, the guy Patton shot against had placed 3rd and won the bronze in 1912. This guy shot a score of 192 out of 200. Patton did not beat him that day. He fired 187 out of 200, besting his 1912 score by 17 points. Or was it 27? I'm really bad with math. It was 37 points. 37 points.
Yes.
Now you know why I'm in a liberal arts profession and not a scientific
You and
one.
me both, trust me. We're both safe.
37 points is what that missed round cost him in 1912. Had he shot 187 in 1912,
right,
he would have beat the gold medal winner by 1 point. He would have been the gold medal champion, the first to ever win the gold medal in the modern pentathlon. 1912 games, Stockholm, Sweden, George S. Patton Jr.
Wow. And despite that happening, he still commanded history.
He managed to do okay
He
for
did
himself
all right.
after the Olympics, yeah.
Well, a great story, Phil. And how do folks come and see this particular firearm here at the National Firearms Museum?
We have the largest collection of Olympic gold medals and Olympic use firearms in the country on display here at the National Firearms Museum. And you can find us off the Interstate 66 outside of Washington, D.C. in Fairfax, Virginia, 7 days a week from 9:30 to 5. Free admission, plenty of free parking as well. You can find us 24/7 on the internet at nramuseum.org.
Phil, thank you for another fascinating edition here of the Curator's Corner.
Thank you, John, for having us on.